students, and they'll go that extra distance, and certainly that's been affirmed here as well. Let's talk about the drama. You now submit your applications. What happens next? Lev, what was the next step?
You wait.
Submitted? Well, all right, so you wait,
wait,
and then what happens? Who called you? What was the way in which?
Well, there was no phone call, there was nothing. We got this email, a one-liner, which I thought was a joke at first. I had no idea. It said Weber@sloan.org, and it said, due to your preliminary review of your preliminary credentials, come to Rockefeller Center at 6 p.m. And I was like, okay, this is a sick joke. This is really a sick joke. And it doesn't say Rhodes Scholarship. It doesn't say Review Board, State Review, nothing. So, I said, let me write an email reply saying, ask what should I wear type of thing. And I replied and I got a 2-word answer, business professional. I was like, okay, this is the real thing. And so I show up about on time, about comfortably late, 5-10 minutes. So I walk in the room and there's all the other candidates. And the first thing that really struck me is that everyone was just as nervous as I was. So there was no major drama for me. I felt very comfortable. We were all like shaking a little. And
how many were in that room?
15.
15.
What also made it a bit easier is, well, 2 elements. One is that one of my high school classmates was there too. She's at Pomona College. So she was in the 15. And what also made it easier is that a person who's now a good friend of mine, Ravi Gupta from Binghamton, he was very nervous. He was like hugging himself, trying to contain himself. He just came up to me and said, okay, I'm Ravi, who are you? And just to keep a conversation going, trying to get something out. And that really helped a lot because he broke the ice right away, didn't give me a second to think about anything, to consider all the different option strategies, who do I talk to first. He got that out of me, got all the anticipation out there. And I felt very comfortable just standing in a very tiny room, mind you, very small little library, around a huge table that took up 90% of the room, and just talking to all the people. So I have to say thank you, Ravi.
And Eugene, you were one of the 15 in that room. Your experience, sort of the same sort of nervousness,
he was on
energy. So what happened that night? I mean, this was in the evening, early evening. You're all assembled in a room. What physically happens next?
Well, at first it's basically all the 15 of us standing around and talking for about 5-10 minutes, and then all the interviewers, I think except one, came into the room and started to talk to us in groups. Some of them took us aside individually, and they wanted to put, I guess, a face to the paper application. They had our picture with the application, but they wanted to see, was the paper application sort of what they imagined the person would be like.
And this was what day of the week? Do you remember?
This was a Tuesday night.
All right. So then you leave, and then what happens?
Well, we don't leave.
You don't leave.
Towards the end of the evening, the Secretary for the State Committee, Mr. Weber, said, well, here's a hat. Well, he couldn't find a hat, but it was a mug. He put some time slots in there that started from 8 a.m. to about, 11 or 12 for the interviews, one just you and the committee, and said, just reach and pull a time. So I was praying that I wouldn't get the 8 a.m. spot. I get 10:20, and then we leave. And you come back when your time is called for the full day activity of
Was
interviews.
that the next day?
That was the next day.
Okay.
So I got there at 10:20. Of course, they're running behind schedule, and people were coming out, So I took up a game. I always want to do something. Otherwise, you're just sitting, staring at something. So I found myself staring at the clock, which was very comfortably located right in front of me on the opposite wall in a very small room. And I would just time how long people were in there. And it didn't indicate anything, but it was just, we just
it parameterized the problem for
Right.
you. You got to sort of sense what was ahead of you.
But what made it very comfortable, the environment, even though, it's competitive and prestigious and all those elements, is that the people were really great. The people who represented the state of New York, I thought, were just extraordinary. And by the end of maybe even the evening before and throughout the day, everyone was convinced that no matter who got the award, that person would be deserving. Because even though this is just the first step in a 2-step process, we knew that someone was going to get it from New York, because all of them came from working backgrounds. Quite a few were immigrants. What made it extraordinary, out of the 15, 8 were chemists. So we were well represented, and the people were just great. They're really great. The attitude in the room was positive. Conversations were just very exciting and very challenging intellectually. And we were just happy to be there and just went with the flow.
Nobody can be happier than obviously your family, but all of us in the university are obviously deeply proud of what the two of you accomplished. You both leave in August or September? September for Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
What is the college that you're going to be, do you know the college at Oxford that you're going to be associated with?
We've applied, but we're not sure whether we're going to be going to the one we've applied to.
Okay, and that's not based on merit or anything.
No,
That's about
it's decided by the warden of the Rhodes
All
House.
right. Okay. And are the curriculum? You're both going to be studying for a D-Phil, which is a Doctor of Philosophy that is given in Britain more than it is here in the United States. And how long of a program is that for your D-Phil approximately? Do you have a sense of what the length of that program
It's
is?
supposedly no more than 4 years, so most of them are done in about 3, and I believe after 4 you're actually kicked out, so you have to complete it within 4.
And the final thing, of course, is a dissertation that is accepted by the faculty. You, Lev, you want to go and be a research chemist, I take it. And Eugene, you're interested in research as well, but you also have expressed an interest in studying medicine.
Right, I want to have eventually I want to practice clinical medicine and perhaps do clinical research as opposed to perhaps basic bench work research.
Now, are both of you going to be studying a similar curriculum? I've heard that you're interested in immunology and...
Right. I'm in organic chemistry.
Okay, so yours is different.
I think we're different, yeah.
I think as far apart on the chemistry field as one can get and still be within chemistry.
Okay, that's really... So what happens after the end of the 4 years with your D-Phil? That's when you're going to start medical school?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of the kind of research that you're interested in at this point, Lev?
Well, for the last year or so, I've been working on aerosol chemistry, which deals with pollutants in the air, deals with health issues such as learning disabilities and asthma, which is very prevalent, and the problems are growing in urban settings.
Urban America, sure.
Right, and particularly in New York and Harlem, where City College is located. And I really was interested in continuing that research at Oxford. Unfortunately, they don't study aerosols. So what I proposed to study was to synthesize crystalline structures of aerosols at different conditions, ranging in temperatures and pressures, and to look at the configurations of those crystalline patterns. What that would tell us is when someone captures a crystal out of the air that we breathe, it would tell them what the source of the pollutant was, because they do depend on temperature ranges and pressure ranges, so that they could optically detect whether it's an industrial pollutant, engine exhaust, or some other form of deep earth element. So hopefully that proposal will be accepted, and that is in the field of inorganic chemistry, and that is what I'm going to pursue. But eventually, I do want to go back to aerosols. I do want to address the social aspect of this study, and which would hopefully lead to some legislation and authoring some legislation in the United States and across the world.
What extraordinarily important work is, and I think that is fabulous that you're going to pursue that. Eugene, are you looking at an academic medical career of teaching in a medical school and practicing medicine at the same time? Is that what you, and doing research?
Potentially that might end up being the case, so an academic hospital, but again, it's so far in the future that at this point they don't really know.
Well, we've established that you're both strategic thinkers, so I'm trying to get you a little further down the line.
Well, when you combine doing research in terms of medicine and then as well as practicing, the fact of perhaps teaching later on it's not that far-fetched, so it may turn out that I will be teaching some of the subjects in a medical school related to medicine.
One last question before we have to end, and I could go on for hours with the two of you because you're both so fascinating and so interested in what you're going to do. I assume both of you have done research with some of your professors over the 4 years that you've been at City University. Have you penned your name to any papers at all, or do you see any of that happening at this point before you leave?
Well, I spent 3 years in theory, and to put out a theory paper challenging an experimental result was rather challenging. Unfortunately, that did not materialize, but I'm in the process of putting out a paper on experimental science on the aerosols. Hopefully that'll be done within the next month or so.
And I hope you're going to come back to City University when you have your credentials, because we're going to love to offer you a position when you finish.
If you give me a carte blanche, I'll be there.
Well, I don't give anybody carte blanche, but I'm sure the two of you are going to do the kind of work ahead that you've done in the past, and we'll be rooting for the both of you. And I think most importantly, you're going to change the world. And what better thing to do, and to do it in the way that you're choosing right now. I want to thank our audience for being with Eugene Shenderoff and Lev Shvedov, our two Rhodes Scholars, 2005 Rhodes Scholars. Thank you for, on behalf of myself and the university, and that concludes this session of CUNY Honors. Thank you so much.